Beneath the dust of centuries and the growth of dense jungles lie structures that defy explanation. From the precision-cut stones of the Andes to the massive monoliths of the Egyptian desert, humanity has left behind a trail of architectural impossibles feats. Today, we're traveling across 4 continents to explore 5 archaeological enigmas that continue to baffle modern engineering. But we aren't just looking at the stone. We are looking through the lens of local legends and the ancient myths that have guarded these sites for generations. We will uncover the mystery of the unfinished obelisk, a 1,200-ton giant frozen in its granite bed, and explore Puma, Punku, where stones were sliced with surgical precision. We'll walk the shores of Easter Island, the home of the legendary walking stone giants, before visiting the Kaali Crater, a scar from the sky wrapped in ancient folklore. Finally, we venture to the Plain of Jars, a landscape littered with the mysterious vessels of a lost civilization. These are the secrets of the ancients. The sun over Aswan does not shine so much as it bleaches. It turns the sky the color of bone, the sandstone cliffs to gold-dusted parchment, and the great river below to a sluggish, molten bronze. And in a vast, open wound in that parchment, the unfinished obelisk lies. It is not a monument, not truly. It is a confession. A single titanic finger of red granite, longer than 7 men head to foot, still fused at the hip to the living rock of the earth, frozen in the act of becoming. Its top is rough-hewn, its sides still bearing the chisel marks of its makers, a frantic scripture of ambition and surrender. To stand beside it is to feel time not as a river, but as a snapped rope. They call this place the Weeping Quarry. The guides will tell you it is for the water that seeps in the low places after the rare rain. But the older men who sell cold water and stories by the gate know better. They say the mountain weeps for its lost child, for the stone that was awakened but never set free. And they say, if you lay your palm flat against the cool, gritty surface of the obelisk at dusk, you can feel a faint, slow pulse, like the heartbeat of a thing in a dream, too deep to wake from. This tradition, the Weeping Quarry, birthed a practice. For generations, the stonecutters of Aswan, descendants in spirit of those pharaonic artisans, have followed an unspoken rule. In every piece they finish, a lintel for a new hotel, a facing stone for a government building. tiny nick near the base, a slight unevenness on a non-load-bearing edge. It is an offering, a returned fragment. A silent prayer whispered to the mountain. We take, but we do not presume to take perfectly. We acknowledge the debt. We remember the limit. Be-own grandfather, who worked the quarries until his hands were maps of white scars, would tap his chisel twice on a finished block, once for strength and once for the flaw he'd just hidden. It keeps the mountain's patience, he'd say, his voice rough as the stone itself. A perfect thing is an insult. It says we have mastered the world. Here, we are only borrowers. It lives in the telling of the unhewn, the oral recitations passed down in families like mine. On still nights, when the heat loosens its grip and the sky is a bowl of indigo pierced by a million cold pins of light, we gather. The storyteller does not stand on a stage. They sit on the ground, a circle of expectant faces around them. They begin not with "once upon a time," but with a long, soft hum that vibrates in the chest, the sound of the saws cutting wet sand into the granite. And then the words flow. Not in a dream of lotus flowers, but in the clear, hard light of noon. She would raise a pair of obelisks at the temple of Karnak, needles to stitch the earth to the heavens, taller and grander than any that had come before. They would be her testament, not in war, but in sublime ambition. And for this, only the stone of Aswan would do. The red granite that holds the fire of the sun within its heart. The storyteller's voice would drop, becoming conspiratorial. The master builder, a man named Inini, whose brow was permanently furrowed from reading the stars and the stone, came here. He walked the quarry, his sandals whispering on the pink grit. He listened. And he heard it, a a mighty seam running true and deep, singing a silent song of potential. "This one," he said, his finger tracing an invisible line. "This will be the southern obelisk, the firstborn of the pair." Here, the teller would begin to describe the mobilization of an empire. The scribes with their palettes marking the sacred dimensions, 140 feet of perfect tapering geometry. The laborers, a river of brown skin and straining muscle, digging the trench around the monolith. The chant of the foreman, the rhythmic The storyteller would make you feel the dust, thick and sparkly in the throat, taste the copper tang of sweat, hear the symphony of grunts and cracks, and the foreman's cry, "Become." For months they worked, the voice continues, weaving the legend. The trench deepened, becoming a canyon around a stone mountain. They drove wooden wedges into channels, soaking them with water from the Nile so they would swell and crack the stone with a sound like the earth clearing its throat. And slowly, so slowly, the obelisk was born from the womb of the earth. It was a time of fierce pride. They were not just cutting stone, they were releasing a god's bone into the light. But the mountain is a living entity. It gives, but it also tests. As they worked to undercut the monolith, to free its belly from the bedrock, the stone spoke back. Not with a shout, but with a sigh. A flaw, hidden deeper than any seer or scribe could divine, revealed itself. A fissure, a hairline crack of betrayal running through the heart of the dream. The circle around the fire would grow utterly still. This is the pivot of the legend. Inini was called. He came down into the trench, his shadow long in the evening light. He ran his hands over the flaw, his fingers reading it like blind men read sacred text. His face, already carved by sun and worry, collapsed. The flaw was fatal. To continue would be to risk the obelisk fracturing as they levered it free, or, worse, shattering as it was raised in Karnak, a public blasphemy of stone. The ambition had outstripped the material. The vision had met the unyielding truth of the world. The storyteller would now employ the central tenet of the And so, with a heart heavier than the stone itself, the pharaoh's command, or the master builder's judgment, was to, and there they would stop. The sentence would hang in the night air, incomplete. The listeners must sit with that silence, that unfinished thought, just as the quarry holds the unfinished stone. It is an act of profound respect for the failure, for the limit, for the mystery. The historical truth which weaves through this legend like the gray threads through the red granite is both simpler and more profound. Hatshepsut did indeed commission twin obelisks for Karnak. One, successfully extracted and erected, stands to this day, a breathtaking shaft of stone that captures the dawn light. The other is this one. You can see it, a jagged, dark seam running diagonally across the top surface, a lightning bolt of imperfection. Engineering analysis suggests it likely appeared during the quarrying process, a latent weakness exposed by the stress. The ancient Egyptians were peerless stoneworkers, but their technology had limits. the rational, heartbreaking decision was made to abandon it, a project consuming untold resources and manpower simply left where it lay. This intersection of legend and fact is where the soul of the place resides. It wasn't a catastrophe or an act of God that stopped the work. It was a recognition, a collective intake of breath followed by a sigh that has lasted millennia. And from that sigh grew the Silent Chisel Festival. Once a year, on the day the elders calculate to be the anniversary of the work's cessation, all stoneworking in Aswan stops. The diamond-tipped wires lie coiled and still. From dawn until dusk, the only sounds in the quarries are the wind and the distant call of the muezzin. Workers and their families gather at the site of the unfinished obelisk. They do not speak of grand successes. They speak of personal ambitions that cracked, of loves that remained unspoken, of journeys not taken, of books half written, of dreams that outgrew the container of a single life. They honor not completion, but intention. Not victory, but the dignity of the honest effort that met an immovable wall. It is a day of profound peace, a national sigh. It acknowledges that not all paths are meant to be walked to their end, and that there is a sacredness in the turning point. This philosophy is etched into the very geography of the region through. It is not marked on tourist maps. It is a pilgrim's path, but one with a peculiar rule. You carry a small, unworked stone from the quarry in your hand. The path is beautiful. It winds past ancient petroglyphs of giraffes and boats, over rises that give stunning views of the Nile's first cataract. But you do not walk to reach a destination. You walk until you feel a certain fullness, a completion of the thought. For some, it is at the foot of a particular acacia tree. For others, it is on a crest where the wind suddenly changes direction. There is no sign, no cairn. The instruction is simply It is an exercise in listening to an inner limit, in practicing the art of abandonment as an act of wisdom, not failure. The path is littered with these small, anonymous stones, a trail of quiet surrenders. Now, the air in the trench was thick with suspended dust, glowing in the slanted rays of the late afternoon sun. Amenhotep, the lead quarryman, a man whose arms were corded like the roots of the ancient sycamore, stood with his palm pressed against the cool flank of the monolith. The festive shouts of the workers had died hours ago, replaced by a murmuring dread. The crack, once a subtle hair, had widened overnight into a hungry, dark mouth after they'd tried to drive a new set of wedges. Ineni, the master builder, stood at the base of the trench, a scroll in his hand that he hadn't looked at in hours. He was not seeing the stone, but the phantom of its perfect twin, already envisioned standing in the court of Karnak, sheathed in electrum, piercing the blue sky. This broken thing at his feet was its shadow. We can try. It is in its heart. He walked forward, placing his own hand beside Amenhotep's. Do you feel it? Amenhotep nodded, his throat tight. He had felt it. We will stop, Ineni announced, not to Amenhotep, but to the quarry, to the mountain, to the gods. Today, now. Ineni simply climbed out of the trench. He took his personal chisel, its bronze blade worn halfway down from years of use, and walked to the northern end of the obelisk's rough-cut tip. He raised it, and with a series of precise, gentle taps, not the forceful blows of extraction, but the soft touches of a scribe making a final period, he carved a single, shallow glyph into the granite. It was the Sax symbol, the sign for protection. It was not a mark of completion, but a ward, a blessing for the stone's eternal sleep. One by one, the workers understood. They laid down their pounders. They coiled their ropes. They gathered their tools. The last sound was not a crack or a shout, but the soft shh of feet on sandy stone as they ascended the ramps out of the trench, casting long, distorted shadows behind them. They left everything. It was a ritual of leaving. no celebratory songs from the workers' village, no clatter from the mason's yard. Just the wind through the quarry, which sounded for the first time like a long, slow exhale. And in the morning, when the first birds began to call, a thin trickle of water was seen seeping from the base of the crack in the obelisk, catching the dawn light like a tear. The weeping quarry had earned its name. Centuries are but grains of sand in the hourglass of this place. The Romans came and looked upon the abandoned giant with a mixture of awe and pragmatic scorn. The early Christians saw it as a symbol of pagan hubris laid low. The Arabs incorporated its lesson into philosophical teachings on Hakadar, divine decree. And through it all, the obelisk lay in its open grave, a perpetual question mark. The modern world buzzes around it now. Tourist buses cough diesel fumes in the parking lot. Guides hold up iPads showing digital reconstructions of what it might have looked like. But the stone's power is undiminished. If you escape the clusters of visitors and find a quiet spot on the lip of the trench, you can still feel it. The heat radiates from the granite. You can trace the channels cut for the wedges. Imagine the thousands of hands. You can see the crack, that stark, undeniable truth. And in that moment, you are not a spectator to history, but a participant in its ongoing, silent conversation. The story of the unfinished obelisk is the story of humanity itself. We are the dreamers who envision needles to pierce the heavens. We are the builders who swing the pounders, who chant in unison, who believe in the becoming. And we are also the ones who must, at times, lay down the chisel, who must read the flaw in the heart of the dream and have the courage to walk away, leaving the sentence unfinished, the path untrodden. It teaches that ambition is sacred, but so is its boundary. That a true master is known not only by what they raise, but by what they choose, with a heavy but clear heart, to leave in the earth. It is a teacher. Its very incompletion is its completion. It is a monument not to a pharaoh's glory, but to the timeless dialogue between vision and reality, between the reach of the human spirit and the gentle, firm hand of the world that holds it. So when you go from this place, carry a small piece of its silence with you. In your own ambitions, leave a tiny, deliberate flaw as an offering to the unknown. Practice now and then the silence of the stilled chisel. remember the red stone in the sun-bleached quarry, forever on the cusp of being, forever perfect in its incompleteness. A testament not to what was achieved, but to the profound and beautiful dignity of the attempt, and the peace that can be found in the moment the final word remains, respectfully unspoken. The wind that sweeps down from the snow-capped peaks of the Illimani does not whistle, it hums. A low, resonant thrum that vibrates through the dry bunchgrass of the Altipiano rattles the loose stones on the ancient pathways and finds its deepest, most profound echo in the place they call Puma Punku. It is a sound that the elders say is not of this air, but of the stone itself, a residual memory trapped in the geometric wounds of a forgotten world. To stand there at over 12,000 feet, where the sky is a thin, aching blue and the air tastes of dust and distance, is to feel profoundly small. The land itself feels unfinished, a colossal workshop abandoned by giants. And scattered across this high desert workshop, like the discarded toys of a furious and meticulous child, are the stones. Not rough-hewn monoliths, but artifacts of impossible precision. Slabs of red sandstone and gray andesite, some weighing over 100 tons, lie fractured and tumbled. But it is their faces that steal the breath. Perfect right angles, razor-sharp edges, surfaces so flat and smooth they feel like glass beneath a calloused thumb. And the notches, the complex, interlocking channels, the H-shaped cramps, the dovetail slots that pocket the stone with mathematical cruelty. They look less like carvings and more like the machined parts of some vast alien engine stamped out by a press of unimaginable force. This is where the legend begins, not with kings or warriors, but with the Akacha Chibi, the Dawn Bundlers. The old ones say that before the sun learned its proper path, the world was soft and malleable. The mountains were clay. The rivers were threads of silver yet to be woven. In that time, the Apu. With a song that vibrated at the frequency of creation, they could ask the stone to relax, to flow like wet clay, to accept an impression as easily as a seal into wax. Puma Punku, they whisper, was not a construction site, but a pottery studio for the gods. Each block was a vessel shaped to hold a specific intention, a fragment of a larger harmonic pattern meant to tune the world. The door of the Puma was to be a threshold, a place where the earthly and the celestial grids would align, and the chosen could step from one realm into the other. The legend lives not in books, but in the hands and ears of the Alakdaquiyas Remainen, the stone-tongue whisperers. These are not shamans in the traditional sense, but men and women, often masons or herders, who feel a peculiar affinity for the cut rock. Old Donato, his face a map of wrinkles as deep as the stone channels, was one such. I found him at dawn, his palm pressed against the face of a colossal andesite slab known as the Gate of the Sun's Shadow. His eyes were closed. You hear it. The Kacha Kipi finished their work, but they left their song behind, like a smell in a room long empty. The stone remembers the vibration. It hums the lost frequency. I placed my own hand on the stone. It was cold, brutally so, leaching the warmth from my skin instantly. But beneath that, or perhaps within my own yearning, I fancied I felt a faint, sub-audible tremor, a phantom echo of that legendary persuasion. I asked. Donato opened his eyes, roomy but piercing. It does not say, it is. He spat a wad of coca leaves onto the dry earth. We have forgotten how to listen for the fit. We only know how to make things stick. With mortar, with glue, with force. These monstrous blocks, with their fiendishly complex interlocking joins, were designed to be assembled without mortar. The precision is such that a razor blade cannot be inserted between the mating surfaces of the few pieces modern researchers have dared to trial fit. This gave rise to the most revered and secretive of the local traditions, Shiu Su Tinku, the dry fit assembly rites. I was permitted to witness a minor rite held not at the main site under the eyes of tourists and archaeologists, but in a secluded courtyard in the nearby village of Tiahuanaco. An apprentice, a boy of no more than 16 named Wilka, stood blindfolded before a low stone table. On it lay a scaled-down, meticulously carved wooden puzzle, a perfect replica of one of the H-block joins from Puma Punku. The pieces were complex, with asymmetrical tabs and slots. The elders, faces solemn, scattered the pieces. Wilka's hands, already scarred from his work as a stonemason's helper, hovered. The only sound was the relentless altipiano wind and the soft clack of wood as his fingers began to move. He did not fumble. His touch was a language. He would run a fingertip along a beveled edge, trace the arc of a channel, and his other hand would already be reaching for the corresponding piece. It was not a process of trial and error, but of kinesthetic memory, of feeling the idea of the join before the physical fact. The elders nodded, their eyes missing nothing. This was not just a test of skill, it was a spiritual pedagogy. To assemble blind was to internalize the principle of Yanantin, the complementary duality that underpins Andean cosmology. Each piece alone was incomplete, a question. Only in its counterpart did it find its answer and its purpose. The ritual taught that true understanding is not visual, but tactile and holistic. Dobulum. Fill. Wilka slotted the final piece, a perfect, seamless join. He removed his blindfold, blinking in the light, his chest heaving not from exertion, but from the release of profound concentration. An elder stepped forward and placed a small, smooth river stone in his palm, a symbol of the first, whole stone before division and creation. Wilka had not just solved a puzzle, he had, in a tiny, humble way, reenacted the harmony the ancients sought. This harmony, the legend insists, was shattered. The story diverges here, blending with the gritty reality of history. Some whisper of I-ak-ak, the soul-suckers, envious beings who learned to mimic the song of persuasion but twisted it, using it to sever rather than join. They sang a note of dissonance that cracked the great gate as it was being tuned. Others speak of Pachacuti, the great cataclysm or turning over of the world. Geological evidence supports a cataclysmic event. Core samples from the nearby Lake Titicaca Basin reveal a layer of silty flood deposits dating to a period around 600–700 AD, a time that coincides with the decline of the Tiwanaku culture, the historical people who inhabited this site. A massive flood, perhaps triggered by a seismic event or a climatic shift, likely inundated the complex, scattering the megaliths like driftwood and burying the grand design under meters of mud. The celestial door was not just broken, it was drowned and forgotten. The historical Tiwanaku, who flourished from roughly 500 to 1000 AD, were the inheritors, not the creators, of Puma Punku's core mystery. Archaeologists see in them a brilliant, expansive state that dominated the southern Andes, a society of astronomers, engineers, and farmers who built upon a sacred, pre-existing site. They likely used the finished blocks, attempting to incorporate them into their own cosmology and architecture. They are the ones who gave it the name Puma Punku. They are the ones whose pottery shards and bone tools we find in the strata. But the deepest cuts, the most impossible geometries, whisper of a deeper past. This lost knowledge is mourned annually during the Akwacha Kayutuna Raimik, the festival of the unseen chisel. It is held on the frostiest night of the dry season, when the stars hang close enough to prick the skin. The people of the surrounding only starlight and the cold glow of the Milky Way, which they call Mayu, the celestial river, illuminate the proceedings. Instead, there is a profound silence broken only by the ritual actions. Elders move among the tumbled stones, their steps careful and reverent. They carry shallow clay bowls. From one, they sprinkle water. to remember when it was soft and to cool the fever of its fracturing. From another bowl, they dust the stone with a fine, dark red powder, powdered hematite. The blood of the earth, Donato said. The offering acknowledges that the method, whether it was sonic levitation, a lost chemical softening agent, or a form of ultra-precision we simply cannot conceive, is gone. The festival does not seek to reclaim it, but to appease its ghost, to acknowledge the debt owed to the anonymous masters whose hands, real or divine, wrought this wonder. Yet, for some, the stones still speak of the future, not just the past. While archaeologists see the intricate networks of channels and drains on the stone blocks as part of an elaborate hydraulic or anti-seismic system, the geomancers see a language. They believe the entire site, in its original assembled state, was a three-dimensional map, a lithic computer. The channels, they say, aligned not just for water but for kiwik, the subtle energy lines of the earth, and for specific stars. An old woman named Marcela, her back bent like a weathered root, showed me. She did not approach the giant blocks. Instead, she took me to a lesser-known corner where a single, heavily channeled slab lay half-buried. She took a pinch of pure white quinoa flour from a pouch and, with a breath as steady as a rock, let it fall in a fine stream. The wind caught some, but the rest settled into the stone channels. She then poured a tiny trickle of water from a gourd. The water, finding the path of least resistance, flowed through the flour-dusted channels, creating a stark white pattern against the gray stone. "See," she said, her voice a dry rustle, "the Mayu flows there in the sky." She pointed to the Milky Way, invisible in the daylight but present in her mind's eye. And here, in the stone, The drain that dries last after the rains speaks of the depth of the water table. The grid is a question. We have lost the answer, but the question is still being asked. My days at Puma Punku became a rhythm of these contrasts, the brutal physical reality of the stone under the punishing sun, and the ethereal persistent hum of legend. I measured joins with calipers, feeling the shock of their precision, while in my ears rang Donato's tales of the dawn bundlers. I sketched the geometric madness, while Marcella's quinoa flower mapped celestial rivers on its surface. The climax of my understanding came not in a sudden revelation, but in a slow dawning during a solitary vigil on the eve of my departure. I had stayed late, long after the last tourist bus had coughed its way back to La Paz. The sun plunged behind the Cordillera Reale, setting the snows of Illimani on fire before surrendering to a purple, then black, velvet sky. The cold clamped down, immediate and biting. The wind's hum seemed to grow louder, more insistent in the darkness. I stood by the largest andesite platform, my flashlight beam, a frail, disrespectful intrusion. In the absolute darkness, the stones ceased to be visual puzzles and became presences. I could feel their mass, their cold radiation, their silent, waiting tension. I thought of Wilka's blind hands, knowing the fit before finding it. Not just with my ears, but with my bones, with the pit of my stomach. I thought of the flood. I thought of the Tiwanaku, finding these godlike fragments and building their own civilization around them, worshipping the echo of a power they couldn't replicate. I thought of the unseen chisel, honored with hematite dust. The flood was the Tiwak-Ak's dissonant song. The Tiwanaku were the faithful apprentices performing their dry-fit rites on a colossal broken scale. The geometric precision was not proof of aliens or lost super science, but of a different relationship with matter altogether, one of persuasion, of harmonic integration, of seeing stone as a partner in creation rather than an obstacle to be conquered. The historical catastrophe provided the literal ground for the metaphorical fall. In its fleeting light, the tumbled stones looked less like a ruin and more like seeds, scattered, dormant, but whole in their impossible perfection. The hope of Puma Punku does not lie in someone someday solving its mechanical puzzle. That is a modern engineering dream. The hope lies in the persistence of the question. In the blindfolded apprentices learning Yanantine through their fingertips, in the geomancers reading futures in water and flower, in the festival that mourns a lost tool, not with despair but with reverence. They are the question. What would it mean to live in a world built on fit, not force? The history is the record of our failure to answer it and our enduring fascination with the asking. As the first hint of dawn bleached the eastern sky, The hum of the wind seemed to soften, or perhaps I simply became part of its frequency. I placed my hand once more on the andesite. It was still cold, still impossibly hard. But the awe it inspired was no longer the cold awe of a mystery to be solved. It was the warmer, deeper awe of a conversation that has been going on for millennia, a story told in rock and ritual, in flood and festival. A story whose ending is not a revelation, but a continuing, hopeful listening. I turned and walked away, leaving the stones to their humming vigil under the waking sky. The wind on Rapa Nui does not whisper, it howls. It is a voice that has crossed 10,000 miles of empty ocean, gathering the cold of southern ice and the salt of forgotten depths before hurling itself against the black cliffs of Anakina or moaning through the tall grass of Rano Raraku. It is the first thing you notice, this eternal, patient voice. The second thing you notice is the silence beneath it. A deep, watchful quiet that seems to rise from the very stone of the island itself. And then you see them. Be not as postcard images, neat and distant, but as presences. They stand on their ahus, their stone platforms, their broad backs to the endless heaving blue of the Pacific. Their blank, elongated faces turned eternally inland. They do not look out to sea, to the horizon from which their ancestors came. They look inward, toward the green slopes of the extinct volcanoes, toward the island's secret heart. They are not sentinels watching for arrivals. They are guardians turned away from the world, as if the greatest threat or the greatest treasure lay not beyond the reef, but within. The old ones, the Maoris, the true people, they had a name for this. They called it It was not simply a direction the statues faced. It was a path, a way of being. The inward gaze is the returning to the source. And every child, learned the story of why the faces turned away from the sea, a story woven from the island's very bones. Long ago, when Hotu Matua, the great king, first beached his great double-hulled canoe at Anakina, he brought more than his people, his sweet potatoes, his chickens, and his gods. He brought a covenant. The priest king carried a small, smooth stone from their ancestral homeland, Hiva, a stone that hummed with a low, warm frequency. It was the Maori's, the life stone, the soul of the people. Hotu Matua planted it deep in the earth, in a hidden grove at the center of the island, a place now called Te Pito. Our strength does not come from where we have been, he declared. His voice carried on that younger, gentler wind. It comes from where we stand. The sea is the path of the Father. We must turn our manas, our spiritual power, inward to nourish her, lest it leak away into the endless blue. For generations, this was the way. The clans, the Mata, prospered. A great Moai's was not a mere monument, it was an aringa oras, a living face. After a powerful chief or priest died, his manaka was too potent, too volatile to be allowed to disperse. Through the sacred F-rite of the unseen burden, the Atapu specialists would capture this essence. The ritual was conducted in absolute silence, within a sealed, thatched hut called a hair peanga. The body would be prepared, the bones cleaned, but the real work was of the spirit. The eldest Ivi Atwa, the bone reader, would chant the binding songs inward, his breath moving not out toward the listeners, but seeming to pull the air of the room into his own chest. He would then approach the finished, uncarved stone eye sockets of a Moai's waiting in the quarry at Rano Raraku. With a paste of sacred coral, ash, and obsidian dust, he would seal the spirit, the unseen burdens of wisdom, protection, and authority into the blind stone. Only then would the statue be ready for its journey. Ah, the journey. This was where history and muscle met legend. We know from the chisel marks and the fallen giants that line the island like a stone army caught mid-stride that they were moved somehow for miles across rugged terrain. The oral tradition holds the answer. Not in engineering diagrams, but in metaphor and power. They called it Mo Hakach, the walking. The statues, infused with the manak of the ancestors, were believed to be guided to their ahua by spiritual force. The hundreds of laborers who rocked them forward on ropes chanted not of pulleys and levers, but of awakening the sleeping giant. They would cry. To see a moai's moving, swaying upright as it inched across the landscape was to see a myth made flesh, or rather, stone. It was a collective act of faith that bent reality. Once erected on the ahu with its back to the sea, the moais was completed with the placing of the pukaos, the great red scoria topknot from the quarry at Punapau, representing a chieftain's hair knot, a crown of authority. Then came the most crucial moment, Enga Matash, the eye. Using a disc of white coral for the sclera and a ring of deep red scoria for the iris, the priests would set the eyes into the sockets. In that instant, the Aringa Oras became alive. And what it saw was not the empty horizon, but the village of its descendants, the taro patches, the chicken coops, the fishing grounds. Its gaze was a blanket of protection, a conduit of fertility from the ancestor to the living land. This was the AC ceremony of the veiled horizon. By turning the ancestor's face from the vast unknown of the sea, the veiled horizon that hid both danger and distant memory, but a gaze that powerful is also a weight. The people lived under the watch of their stone fathers. It bred a profound introspection, a culture that looked inward for solutions, for blame, for salvation. The traditions that grew were somber, beautiful, and heavy, with the awareness of being watched. There was the silent vigil of the turning backs, held on the night of the new moon. In complete silence, they would turn their own backs to the ocean, mirroring the statues, and simply look inland with their ancestors. For hours they would stand, feeling the wind, listening to the night birds, watching the shadows on the hills. No prayers were spoken aloud. The communication was in the shared direction of attention, a communal reinforcement of the covenant. It was a reminder that their fate was here, in this soil, under this sky, not in dreams of elsewhere. Then came the whispering feast of the guardians, held after the first sweet potato harvest. A great feast would be laid on long, porous tables, but the choicest tubers, the fattest lobsters, the most tender chicken were not for the living. They were placed in small, exquisite umuai earth ovens at the foot of each moais. As the steam rose, carrying the essence of the food upward, the family members would approach and, with their lips almost touching the cold stone, whisper their news to the ancestor. They would tell of a birth, a marriage, a quarrel, a hope. They believed the statue consumed the spiritual essence of the food and, nourished by it, could better hear the whispered secrets and intercede with the gods. The air on those nights was thick with the murmur of 1,000 private conversations, a soft, sibilant rustle like the sound of the wind through the howhow's trees. For centuries, this delicate balance held. The island was a closed system, spiritually and physically. The Ekamoais multiplied, their numbers reaching into the hundreds. The competition between clans to erect larger, more magnificent ancestors became the central focus of life. It was an arms race of mana. But the world of Rapa Nui was finite. Historians would later piece together the slow-motion tragedy, the clearing of the great palm forests for rollers and levers, the strain on resources from the monumental projects, the erosion of the unprotected soil. The oral tradition tells it not as ecology, but as broken covenant. The story is told of a time of growing hunger, when the rains grew thin and the seabirds grew scarce. The priests, desperate, performed a new and desperate version of the EC rite of the unseen burden. They believed the problem was not a lack of mana, but that it was trapped, turned too inward, grown stagnant. In a catastrophic ceremony, they attempted to redirect the gaze of the most powerful Moai, to turn it outward to sea, to summon the fish and the rain from the horizon. They broke the taboos of the inward gaze. The result was not plenty, but chaos. The stories say the Moais themselves groaned as their eyes were spiritually pried from the land. With the horizon unveiled, all the unseen fears flooded in. Clan turned against clan in a desperate struggle for dwindling resources. The symbol of their power became the target of their rage. In what historians call the Huri Moai period, and the legends call Te Ingao, O Te Manavak, the biting of the spirit. One by one, the great Aringa Oras were pushed from their ahus, the sacred coral eyes shattered. The ropes that once walked them upright were used to strangle their necks and pull them down. As each stone face struck the earth with a sound like the end of the world, a connection was severed. The silence that followed was different. It was no longer the watchful silence of guardians, but the hollow silence of abandonment. The people entered a dark age. The old gods were forsaken. Where the Moai's culture had been collective, ancestral, and inward-looking, the Birdman cult was individualistic, volatile, and focused on a single desperate prize. Each year, warriors would race down the sheer cliff of Rano Kau to the islet of Motu Nui, swim through shark-infested waters, and retrieve the first sooty tern egg of the season. The winner's clan would rule for the year. It was a complete reversal. The ancestors' gaze was replaced by the warriors' scramble. Yet, even in this broken time, echoes of the old ways persisted, like stubborn shoots in cracked lava. The ESP of the inward Gazik became a secret personal practice. Those who remembered would walk, alone, from the coast toward the center of the island. They would not look at the fallen giants, for their fallen state was a source of shame and pain. Instead, they would walk to the high crater of Rano Raraku, the quarry womb where the Moais still slept in the rock, half-born. Or they would journey to the true navel, Te Pito o Te Henua. There, they would sit and simply look inward, not at the landscape, but into their own memory and loss. It was a meditation on what had been, a private vigil for a murdered world. This was the island the first Europeans found, a society in fragments, living among the backs of their fallen gods. The Dutchman Roggeveen, who landed on an Easter Sunday and gave the island its misplaced European name, saw the toppled statues and assumed they were the work of a vanished, more sophisticated race. He did not understand he was looking at a suicide, not a murder by outsiders. The later slave raids, diseases, and missionaries did the final, cruel work, stripping away the last threads of the old knowledge. But stone endures longer than memory, and land holds a charge. Today, some of the Moaigs have been resurrected. They stand again on Ahu Tongariki, 15 15 mighty sentinels against the dawn, their backs to the pounding surf. Tourists come by the plane load. Guides recite the archaeological theories of walking statues, and cameras click incessantly. The modern Rapa Nui people are a resilient blend, fiercely protective of their heritage, navigating the difficult waters of tourism and sovereignty. And on certain nights, if you know where to go and who to ask, you might witness something older. Local family perhaps on the ganus of their restored ancestor. They do not face the statue for a photo. They turn as one and stand with their backs to the sea, looking out over their darkening homeland. They are silent. They are performing the silent vigil of the turning backs. They are remembering the covenant. Not empty, but full. Yet in the act of the people turning their backs to the vastness, in their voluntary choice to look inward, to see the fragile beauty of their island, its history of glory and folly, its struggle and its hope, they become the eyes of the ancestors. The gaze is reactivated not by coral and stone, but by blood and intention. What they guard, what they have always guarded by the profound act of turning away from the sea, is an idea. the idea that true strength is not in expansion, but in depth. Not in looking outward for salvation or blame, but in looking inward with clear and courageous eyes at the world you have made, the resources you steward, and the legacy you will carve, not in stone, but in the choices of the living. They are a warning and a promise, carved in volcanic tuff. Their vigil is silent, their burden unseen, but their message, carried on the endless wind, is perhaps finally being heard again, that the only horizon that matters is the one within, and the first step toward any future is the eye path of the inward gaze. The air over Sayermaa is never truly still. It moves through the ancient juniper forests with a scent of salt and pine, whispering across the flat, stone-strewn fields that the islanders have wrested from the grip of glaciers. But in one place, a deep and profound silence seems to gather, pooled in a bowl of earth, as if the land itself is holding its breath. To a stranger's eye, it is a curious geological feature, a near-perfect depression, 100 meters across, its steep earthen walls furred with trees, a small dark lake glinting at its bottom like a blind eye staring back at the sky. But to those whose blood remembers, it is something else entirely. It is the place where the sky fell in love with the earth, and in a single searing embrace changed everything. They speak of Some say it was because the people had grown forgetful, lighting their hearth fires without thanks, or because a great sorcerer had dared to steal a sliver of the sun's own flame. Others whisper, it was no rage at all, but a sorrow so vast it could only be expressed in fire. A piece of Uku's own heart, grown too heavy with the weight of time, breaking off and falling. Whatever the cause, the tale is consistent in its awe. A sun-bright spear, a second daylight that streamed from the north, hissing and roaring like 1,000 dragons in flight. It struck with a sound that was not a sound, but an end of all sound, a pressure that flattened forests and shook fish from the lakes. Then, the long, terrible silence and the smoke that rose for 9 days, blotting out the sun, smelling not of wood fire, but of crushed stone and a sharp metallic tang that stung the nostrils. This is the memory held in the soil, and the people, the descendants of those who felt that cataclysm some 3,500 winters past, have woven their lives around that memory, not in fear, but in a solemn, intimate pact of remembrance. They do not call it a crater, they call it Taivakivi. And around it, traditions have grown like moss on the crater's rim, each one a thread in the fire veil that connects them to that moment. One such thread is the forging. Long ago, the first to dare climb down into the scorched pit found the earth littered with strange, heavy stones, blackened and fused. They were not like the local gray limestone. These were dense, metallic, and when struck, they rang with a peculiar, clear tone. The wise ones understood. This was the slag of the sky iron, the dross of the divine fire. To use it was an act of profound alchemy, turning destruction into creation. Even now, the master smiths of the region, though few remain, keep the art. Old Ilmar, whose forge sits in the lee of a hill a league from the crater, is one of them. His face is as leathery and lined as an old saddle, etched by decades of fire glare. "You don't find the true iron in the lake?" he'd grunt, his hands gnarled as juniper roots, selecting a lump of ore from a special oak chest. "That's for the fools and the tourists." The impact. It sowed the land with its essence. when he places the meteoritic slag in the coals, it doesn't just glow red. It seems to drink the light and pulse with a sullen, inner luminescence. The air hums. It resists, Ilmar says, sweat tracing canals through the soot on his brow. Earth iron yields. Sky iron argues. It has a memory of cold, dark space. You must persuade it. He works it not into swords that would be too violent, a desecration of the fallen star's peace, but into tools of binding, hinges for the doors of important homes, the bands for milk pails to ensure plenty, and most sacred of all, the marriage bracelets, twisted strands of iron and silver. A bond forged from the sky's own metal, he'd say, handing a finished pair to a nervous bridegroom. It will hold through any fire. Each hammer strike, to him, is an echo of that ancient impact, a shaping of chaos into purpose. There is a strict taboo known to every child. No stone may be taken from the crater floor. It is not merely a rule. It is a visceral understanding. Young Jury, many years ago, learned this the hard way. Driven by a dare and the scorn of his city-educated cousins, he scrambled down the steep slope one midsummer's eve, skidded across the pebbled shore of the dark lake, and pocketed a smooth, egg-shaped stone that felt oddly warm. That night, camped with his family, he was seized with a fever so sudden and fierce it burned like ice. In his delirium, he dreamt not of fire, but of infinite, silent falling, a loneliness so absolute it crushed his spirit. His grandmother, without a word, took the stone from his clutching hand, returned to the crater at dawn, and whispered an apology to the water as she dropped it in. By the time she returned, Jury's fever had broken, leaving him shivering and forever respectful. To honor what was given, not taken, the people have the annual vigil, the Ektivatuk, or sky ember ceremony, held on the longest day of the year, when the sun barely dips below the horizon. It is not a loud festival. As twilight blurs the line between day and night, the community gathers on the crater's western rim. They come in silence, dressed in muted colors. The elders carry not torches, but shields, old round things of polished bronze, or, in modern times, mirrors of burnished steel. They position themselves along the rim, a broken circle of aged sentinels. And they wait. As the sun, swollen and red, balances on the edge of the world, they tilt their shields. Beams of captured sunlight, weak but potent, lance down through the gathering dusk, striking the dark water at the crater's heart. It is a breathtaking sight. Dozens of trembling liquid gold pathways stitching the sky to the pit's depths. We are returning a little of its light, my own grandfather explained to me, his voice a soft rasp in the holy quiet. It fell to us in fire. We give it back in reflection. A reminder that we remember its journey. For that half hour, the crater is no longer a scar but a vessel, filled not with water but with liquid, rippling sunlight. It is an act of exquisite reciprocity, a dialogue conducted in light and memory. The silence during this vigil is so deep you can hear the hum of the earth, or perhaps it is the blood in your own ears pounding in time with an ancient celestial heartbeat. The women, meanwhile, have their own language of remembrance. Patterns in their shawls,
Or fire veils are not simple geometrics, they are maps of a catastrophe.
Using wool, dyed with lichen, a rusty red, onion skins, a deep gold, and iron-rich mud, a stark black, they recreate the impact fracture lines, the radial bursts, the concentric shock waves. To drape a fire veil over your shoulders is to wear the memory of the event, to feel its shape and pattern against your skin. My grandmother, her fingers flying over the loom with a rhythm as old as the hills, would say, "We are not weaving the story of destruction, Kulakek. We are weaving the mending." Each thread is a year, each pattern a promise that the world did not end. It was transformed. The shawls are worn at births, at marriages, at the sky. We carry it with beauty. And then, at the end of the growing season, just after the harvest is in, comes the most solemn rite, the silent procession to cool the old star heart. It is led by the village elders, the Vanamad. They wear simple gray wool. One carries an earthenware jug of fresh milk, still warm from the cow. Another carries a pitcher of water drawn from a spring that feeds the crater lake. The only sounds are the crunch of boots on gravel, the sigh of the wind in the pines on the crater walls, and the distant cry of a gull. At a specific, unmarked point on the northern rim, a place known only by tradition and the alignment of a particular crooked pine, the elder with the milk kneels, his joints cracking in the quiet. He pours the white stream onto the soil, murmuring words so low they are felt more than heard, for the fire that gave life, not just death, for the fertility that followed the ash. The milk, symbol of sustenance and the earth's bounty, sinks into the ground, a gift to the scorched earth. Then, for the peace that follows the storm, for the quenching of all rage, divine and mortal. It is an act of profound tenderness, like offering a drink to a slumbering giant. They believe, with a certainty that needs no scientific proof, their libations are a gentle aid, a human-scale kindness offered to a cosmic wound. I have stood in that silent procession, feeling the weight of the unspoken past pressing on my shoulders as tangibly as one of grandmother's fire veil shawls. I have watched the milk disappear into the greedy soil and thought of the historical truth that lives alongside the legend. Some 1,500 years before the Common Era, a chunk of iron from the asteroid belt, perhaps as large as a small house, screamed through the atmosphere over the Baltic. It fragmented in a blinding flash, and the largest piece, weighing hundreds of tons, struck this very spot with the force of a small nuclear weapon. The blast wave would have incinerated life for miles. The layer of impact debris, the rare iridiums, and the fused glass spherules that scientists later found, tells a tale of ecological reset. The forests were flattened, then regrew richer from the fertilizing ash. The first stories told by the survivors, the Proto-Finnic tribes who hunted and fished these lands, would have been of world-ending fire from a wrathful god. Over centuries, the terror mellowed into myth, and the myth hardened into tradition, a coping mechanism forged in the collective memory of trauma. The Kaali Crater is where these two rivers meet. The river of celestial mechanics and the river of human meaning. The legend is not a falsehood to be corrected by fact. It is the emotional and spiritual truth of the fact. The meteor did not care. It was physics. But the people had to care. They had to make sense of the unmakeable sense, to find a pattern in the random violence of the cosmos. So they wove it into their craft, their rituals, their very relationship with the land. They transformed a site of utter destruction into a sacred focus, a place where heaven and earth had conversed in the most violent of terms, and from which a new understanding was born. Now, as I sit on the rim in the quiet of an ordinary afternoon, the lake below is just dark water. The trees are just trees. But if I listen with more than my ears, I can feel it. The faint metallic taste on the wind that the old ones associate with the star smell. The palpable sense that this is a place of event, where time is not a flat field but a folded cloth with that searing moment pressed closest to the surface. It leaves one not with fear, but with a strange, solemn hope. It tells us that even from the fire that falls from heaven, from the force that can gouge a permanent scar in the world, life not only continues, but finds a way to venerate the scar. We cool the star heart with milk and water. We return its light with mirrored shields. We wear its fracture lines as art. We forge its substance into bonds of love. In doing so, we assert a quiet, stubborn truth that we are here remembering, and in remembrance we heal not the earth, which has already healed itself in its own slow way, but our own human awe. We make the cataclysm sacred, and in that sacredness we find our place in a universe that is both indifferent and intimately known. And we caught it, not in our hands, but in our stories. And in doing so, we learned how to hold the world. In the high, mist-wreathed plateau of Xianghuang, where the mountains of Laos fold into the sky like crumpled green silk, there lies a question carved in stone. It is not written in any script known to man, but in the silent, enduring forms of thousands of giant jars. They rest on the grassy hills, in the shadow of ancient trees, alone and in clusters, some standing proud, others tilted as if listening to the earth, many cracked and worn by millennia of rain and sun. To walk among them is to walk through the skeleton of a forgotten dream. The air itself feels different here, thick with time, humming with a silence so profound it becomes a sound of its own. The local Lao and Khmu people do not call it an archaeological site. They call it Thong Hai Hing Shi, the Stone Jar Meadow, and they speak of it not with the certainty of scholars, but with the soft, respectful tones reserved for the sleeping. The oldest stories, the ones whispered by grandmothers to children as the fire dies to embers, say the jars were not made, but born. They tell of a time when the giants of the highlands, the ESP Kong Loak, walked the earth. These were not malevolent spirits, but lonely, immense beings whose footsteps shook fruit from the trees. They were fond of rice wine, Lao Laos, but had no vessels fit for their thirst. And so, from the belly of the sacred mountain, Phao Keng, they quarried the stone, sandstone, granite, conglomerate, and with hands that could cradle a water buffalo, they shaped the jars. The largest, they say, was for the king of giants, a vessel so vast it could hold the monsoon rains of a season. When the age of giants passed, fading into the mist from whence they came, they left their cups behind, a final toast to a world that grew too small for them. A more tender legend speaks of a great and generous king, Kun Chung, who ruled a powerful kingdom from these high plains. After a long and victorious campaign, he commanded the creation of these jars to brew and store staggering quantities of celebratory rice wine for his loyal subject. The wine, infused with herbs and the joy of peace, was said to heal the sick and gladden the heart. The jars, once emptied, were left as monuments to that time of plenty, stone sentinels to guard the memory of unity and festivity. But the most pervasive whisper, the one that gives the place its solemn air, is the funerary tale. For generations, it has been said, the jars are not for the living, but for the dead. The ancients, perhaps the Mon Khmer ancestors of the region's people, would place their departed inside these stone cylinders, allowing the body to decompose or be exposed to the elements, a practice known as excarnation. Later, the cleansed bones would be collected for a final burial. They will approach a particularly large or prominent jar, just as the first light bleeds over the eastern ridges, press their ear to its cool, rough surface and listen. They say that on very still mornings, you can hear the murmurs of ancestors, not words, but feelings, echoes of laughter, sighs of sorrow, the rustle of a long-ended journey. It is not a summoning, but a listening, an act of remembrance that binds the present to the silent chorus of the past. The modern world, with its calipers and carbon dating, has peered into the jars and found traces of this ancient truth. Archaeologists, from the French geologist Madeleine Colani in the 1930s to teams from Laos and Australia today, have uncovered human remains, burial goods, and ceramic pots around and inside the jars. The science suggests a use spanning from 500 BCE to as late as 500 CE. Possibly linked to the Iron Age Sahuin culture. They speak of a complex mortuary practice, of a society that invested immense labor quarrying the stone miles away. The historical fact and the funerary legend embrace like old friends, one giving skeleton, the other soul. Why such monumental scale? And what of the intricately carved stone discs found near some jars, some etched with concentric circles and human figures? They are thought to be lids, but they feel like more. They feel like seals, or perhaps portraits. The answer, as in all good stories, lies not in a single truth, but in the layers. Amid these legends and facts live the rituals of the now, the gentle, ongoing conversation between the people and the stones. Most sacred is the silent procession of the jar guardians. In the cool, dewy quiet of the early morning, long before tourists arrive, a small group will walk the sites. They carry soft cloths and vessels of water drawn from the nearby streams. Without a word, they will clean the jars of leaves and dirt, and with a reverent hand, anoint them with clear water, a gesture of respect and cooling sustenance for the stone. It is a maintenance of memory, a tactile prayer. Then there is the S-Baun Kam Kaus, the festival of unanswered questions held near the summer solstice when the days are longest and the mind turns to life's great puzzles. Villagers from across the plateau gather at the edge of the jar fields. They do not feast or dance boisterously. Instead, they share simple meals, and as night falls and the stars prick the vast velvet sky, they begin to speak. They pose the questions that have no answers, not about the jars, but about life. What does the mountain dream of? The ritual acknowledges that some mysteries are not meant to be solved, but to be held, to keep the human spirit humble and wondering. It is a festival that celebrates curiosity itself. And for the souls who may still linger, or for those one wishes to honor, there is the leaving of Hua Fi. These are small, intricate boats woven from dried river grass and fragrant lemongrass stalks. Into these tiny vessels, people place minute offerings: a grain of sticky rice, a petal from a frangipani flower, a strand of thread. At dusk, they gently set these spirit boats inside the hollow of a chosen jar. The offering is for forgotten journeys. The boats are never removed. They simply disintegrate with time and weather, their essence returning to the earth, their journey completed. When a new jar is discovered, perhaps by a farmer clearing land or by an archaeologist's careful survey, a quiet ritual of welcome is observed. No fanfare, no press. Kayert. No fanfare, no press. Those who find it will collect smooth, water-worn stones from the nearest river. In a silent, meditative act, they place these stones in a wide circle around the newly revealed jar, a gentle boundary marking its return to the world of the seen. It is a way of saying, "We see you. You are not alone." It was into this landscape of layered meaning that a young man named Cam arrived one evening in the fading ochre light of the dry season. Cam was from Vientiane, an architect trained in modern methods, sent by a cultural heritage foundation to survey Site 3 for a proposed minimally intrusive walking path. He carried maps, a tablet, a theodolite. He carried the weight of expectation and the quiet skepticism of a man of grids and angles for things that could not be measured. His guide was an older Khmu man named Bounty, whose face was a map of smile lines and whose eyes held the perpetual calm of the highlands. "You will stay in the village tonight," Bounty said, his voice as rough and warm as tree bark. "Tomorrow at first light we go to the jars. They are best met in the morning, when the night's thoughts are still upon them." he was shown to a simple wooden house on stilts. Sleep was elusive. It was broken occasionally by the call of a night bird, a sound that only deepened the quiet. He thought of his project, of stress points, visitor flow, and preservation guidelines. It felt suddenly clinical, irrelevant. They drank bitter, strong coffee and ate sticky rice rolled in banana leaves. As they walked the red dirt path toward Site 3, the world was monochrome shades of gray, black, and deep blue. Mist clung to the valleys below like cotton wool. Then, as they entered the clearing, the sun's first rays struck the highest ridge. The jars emerged from the gloom. Photographs had not prepared him for their physicality, their profound, silent gravity. They were not neat or uniform. They were individuals. Some were colossal, over 3 meters tall, their rims thick and uneven. Others were squat and wide. Many were partially buried, as if the earth was slowly reclaiming them. Moss and lichen patched their surfaces in greens and silvers. The morning light, low and golden, poured across the field, casting long, distorted shadows that made the jars seem to lean toward one another in secret conversation. The air was cool and smelled of damp earth, crushed grass, and something else. A mineral scent, the smell of deep time. "This is it," Baum said, his professional demeanor crumbling into awe. Bomi smiled softly. Tom set to work with his equipment, but his focus was fractured. He'd measure the circumference of a jar and then find himself running his fingers over the tool marks on its interior, the precise, patient strikes of a chisel held by a hand that turned to dust 2,000 years ago. He'd check his level and then be transfixed by the way a fern had taken root in a crack, life insistently cradled by death. Baumi followed him at a distance, not interfering, occasionally placing a respectful hand on a jar as he passed, as one might touch the shoulder of an old friend. At noon, they rested in the shade of a jar so large it could have sheltered a dozen men. Calm voiced the question that had been buzzing in his head all morning. Bauni, what do you truly believe they are for? A city man asks for one answer, he said. They are resting places for the dead, yes? For meaning, Baumi said simply, a hole in stone is an empty thing, but fill it with a story, a ritual, a bone, a whisper, then it becomes something. It holds something precious. That is their purpose, to hold. He began to sketch not just lines and angles, but the play of light on stone, the way a certain jar framed a view of the distant mountains. He started waking earlier not to work, but to walk alone among the jars in the pre-dawn silence. One such morning, driven by an impulse he didn't understand, he approached the largest jar at Site 3. Remembering the tradition, he hesitated, then slowly leaned forward, pressing his ear to its sun-warmed surface. At first, there was only the hum of his own blood. Then, as he relaxed, as he truly listened, he heard it. Not voices, not words. It was a resonance, a low, almost sub-auditory thrum, like the memory of sound. Was it the wind channeling through the grass? In that moment, he felt a connection, a thread pulled taut across centuries. He was listening, and in the silence, something was communicated. A feeling of immense age, of patience, of cycles of decay and growth. He pulled away, his eyes wet for reasons he couldn't name. The climax of Kam's journey came not with a dramatic discovery, but with a slow, dawning realization. His foundation, impressed with his initial reports but concerned by his shifting focus, sent his project manager, a brisk, efficient woman named Anong, to check on his progress. She arrived with updated timelines and budget sheets. They toured the sites together, Kam now acting as the guide. He showed her the technical aspects, but he also found himself pointing out the spirit boats in a jar, explaining the festival of unanswered questions, describing the Guardian's procession. He spoke of the tool marks not just as data points, but as signatures. At the end of the day, at Site 1, as the sunset painted the jars in fiery hues of orange and purple, she turned to him. But your proposal, it has changed. You are no longer designing a path through the site. You are suggesting viewing platforms far back, limiting access, using local guides for all visits. This will reduce projected visitor numbers by 60%. The Foundation will not be pleased. Kam looked out at the jars, black silhouettes against a raging sky. He thought of the whispers, the spirit boats, the circle of river stones. He thought of the dead who might rest here and the living who still cared for them. He thought of Baunmi's words, "They are vessels for meaning." We've been asking, how can people best see the jars? To hear them, you need silence. You need distance. You need respect, not access. But Anong was silent for a long time, watching the last light die on the stone. The budget, she began, then stopped. You write the new proposal. Explain it not with numbers, but with this. She gestured at the darkening field. Make them feel what you feel. Perhaps that is a language they will understand. It was a small victory, a chance. That night, in the village, there was to be a small gathering, for Anong's visit coincided with the time when the spirit boats were traditionally renewed. As full darkness fell, villagers, men, women, children began to move toward Site 2, carrying tiny, flickering candles and their carefully woven grass boats. Kam and Anong followed at a respectful distance. The candles cast a dancing golden light on the jars, making them seem to breathe. There was no chanting, no formal ceremony. People moved from jar to jar, some alone, some in family groups. An elder would lift a child to place a boat inside. A young woman would stand for minutes, her hand on a jar, her eyes closed. The only sounds were the whisper of grass, the soft murmur of a parent's explanation, the cry of a night insect. It was not a show for tourists, it was a living dialogue. Later, as they walked back, Baumi fell into step beside Calm. "You saw," was all he asked.
I saw,
Calm replied. "The path you make now," Bounty said, "it will be a good one. It will be a circle of river stones around the whole place." On Cam's final morning, he and Baumi went to a lesser-known cluster of jars on a remote hillside. There, half hidden by bamboo, was a single, perfect jar, unbroken, its rim lapped by wildflowers. It had been known to the villagers but was not on any official map. In silent agreement, they walked to the nearby stream and collected smooth, gray stones. Working together, without a word, they formed a wide, loose circle around the jar, a quiet welcome, a gentle boundary. As they finished, the sun broke through the mist, illuminating the jar in a shaft of pure white light. It stood there dignified and serene, a vessel of mystery bathed in the morning. He wrote his proposal with a poet's heart and an architect's precision. He spoke of thresholds and reverence, of listening points and guardian-led circuits. To his astonishment, the foundation approved it. The project would be smaller, slower, and far more beautiful. It has survived centuries of jungle growth, the tragic scars of a secret war that saw the plateau become the most bombed place on Earth, and the slow creep of modern curiosity. Through it all, the jars have simply waited. For in a world obsessed with answers, they remain a breathtaking question. They teach that a mystery cared for is more valuable than a mystery solved. That history is not just facts in the ground, but stories in the heart and rituals in the hands. for the boy who leaves a grass boat, for the elder who anoints with water at dawn, for the architect who learns to listen, they become something more personal, a mirror. They hold whatever we bring to them, our wonder, our grief, our questions, our hope. They are the silent, steadfast guardians of the unfinished story, reminding us that some journeys have no end, and that the most sacred things are often those we are wise enough not to fully understand, but simply to honor. In their enduring, patient silence, they offer a profound and hopeful reflection that we, too, are vessels, and what we choose to hold defines not only our past, but the legacy we leave for the mists of the future.